I am the Global Director for Youth Safety Policy.
Awesome. And I guess to start with a general question, what does safe internet youth experiences look like for you?
I think it's one where teens engage in meaningful ways, in positive ways, and where they feel like they're in control of what's happening to them.
Good definition. I loved in the panel how when we got into the discussion of competing pressures and how you work with those, you mentioned timing as like a critical aspect of that equation. What do you think right now is one of the most pressing issues in this time pertaining to safety and policy? And again, like you talk about the proactivity versus the reactivity, are we on that proactive side of this specific issue?
So in terms of the juncture that we're at, and what I'm especially concerned about when it comes to safety in teens, it's age. Mm-hmm. Age is really the linchpin. It's the fundamental point where if you're telling a platform your age and you lie about it and you say you're 14 years old, and a lot of teens do this. If I had social media at the time, I probably would have misrepresented my age as well. But teens will say they're over the age of 18. And then they're fed into adult experiences. And you know as well as I do that what teens see and experience online should not be the same as a 40-something-year-old mom, right? Like, I don't want my kids to see the same content that I see. I don't want them to have the same experiences. And so I think that is a pressing issue across all of industry that we're seeing. In terms of your other point that you made about being preventative versus being reactive, I think there is a lot that we can do. And, I can speak for the work that we're doing at Meta to ensure that we're getting teens into the right experiences based on their age. But I think that we need a holistic approach that applies to any app that teens are on, because teens on average are on 40 apps a week. That may not be how many the two of you are on, but this was according to a Common Sense Media report that came out last year. So I think we need to think bigger and think proactively in a way that benefits the ecosystem rather than one or two or three apps that are doing a lot to proactively fix a fundamental issue that is impacting teens.
Last time we talked, you mentioned how Meta was trying to improve the Instagram algorithm to not focus people into echo chambers and silos. And since then, they implemented the reset algorithm where you can completely flush your algorithm and restart, which you mentioned. How does this help teens on social media to actually tangibly detox?
Detox is a great word. And it's not, to be clear, it's not only for teens, it's for adults as well. So it applies to everybody. We just rolled the resetting recommendations, I want to say, a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. So it's a little bit early to understand what the overall impact is. And we're going to be evaluating it and looking at metrics and how often it's used. But I think that giving teens the opportunity to take a step back, to look at their algorithm, to think through, do I want to be seeing the same content over and over again? It gives them that pause. And if they reset their recommendations, they can explore new things. They can be more intentional about what they're looking at, and they can really almost have a redo at what interests them. So I think it's an awesome feature. I'm really excited about it, and I'm excited to see how teens use it and whether people think it's a valuable addition to the toolbox.
Yeah, and in terms of developing updates like these, what have you found the most difficult in engaging youth perspectives to make sure that they inform your updates? And what has been something that's really effective in doing that as well?
What is sometimes challenging, and this was alluded to in one of the panels, is the competing interests and hearing different perspectives where you struggle to find either commonalities or to understand what the competing priorities and needs are. How do you synthesize them and drive whatever change you're trying to drive? And it sometimes means that we land in a place where maybe some people don't necessarily want us to be there, others do. And so those types of decisions have to be made. And so that's sometimes frustrating. I think your other question of how do we bring teen voices into the mix, I mentioned it during the panel, but it's through user research. It's through the trust, transparency, and control labs work that we do. And one of the things that I think is important is to get a diverse group of teen voices and to hear from them all. And so doing it on a global scale is sometimes difficult because we work under strict timelines, or we have to make decisions within a couple of months. And so really ramping up, bringing in those voices, as well as the parent voices, the expert voices, the regulator voices, it's a lot of work to juggle. And so it sometimes brings trade-offs and not necessarily bringing every teen voice in from all over around the world.
I liked how in the panel there was like a legal voice there at almost every spot on the panel, because it is such an important thing to have a legal background in the work that you do. How has that informed your interaction with like state, local, federal government on incorporating youth safety into various parts of Meta? And are you met with more pushback than acceptance most of the time, or vice versa?
So I think that my having a legal background, it allows me to understand that side of the house. And it allows me to anticipate what issues might come up in discussions, but I'm on the policy side of the house. And so when it comes to the legal implications, the legal pressures, I work hand in hand with the legal team, and they're the authorities in the room on what those implications mean from the legal perspective. In terms of the regulatory landscape and what we hear from regulators and policymakers, my job is to listen to them. It's to listen to them, to understand what their issues are, to relay those concerns to the teams that I work with. Sometimes my role is to advocate, depending on what the context is and like how I'm brought into the conversation. And for example, when it comes to our App Store legislation, we've been pushing for federal and state legislation to get parental consent at the App Store level anytime a teen under 16 wants to download an app. And so I have met with a lot of different audiences, including policymakers and regulators around the world, to advocate for it. So there are also situations in which I advocate, I get questions. Sometimes there's pushback or debates over whether it's the right solution or not. But I often find that the most productive conversations are really me talking about the work that we do, and then more importantly, me listening to what are the issues that are really, I'm not going to say stopping progress from happening, but interfering with the direction of travel that I think we should be going in.
Yeah. My last question builds right off of that. We mentioned in our last meeting that it's often easy for students to feel very disconnected from social media companies and maybe even villainize them.
Yeah.
But in reality, whenever you talk about your work, I realize that like it's really supposed to be a collaborative effort. So what is one message that you would like to share just to the youth population in general?
We want to be allies. I think that your use of the word vilify is accurate in terms of people doing that. And it's unfortunate because there are so many good people who work at these companies who care deeply about getting it right. And they're not too far from their teen years sometimes, or they're parents like myself of tweens or teens. And even if they don't have kids, they were a kid once. And the point is, vilifying doesn't help anybody. We're all humans. We all want the right outcome. And it's really to ensure that teens have age-appropriate and safe experiences online. And I think the way to make that happen is to collaborate. And while I understand that there are always political pressures and the reasons that might motivate whatever the audience is to take a more adversarial position, sometimes that forces people to do the right thing. But I think trying to collaborate in the first instance generally gets you to a better result than being antagonistic. So I want people to know that there are people like me and many others across industry, and you heard from them today, who want to be teen allies, who want to support parents, and who want to make the changes that are going to protect teens when they're online.